there's no single silver bullet to any of this stuff. But I think we have to begin by with the abolitionist vision. The first thing I always think about when I've been trying to write through and think through what the abolitionist vision is, for a long time now. And let me just say, any thoughts I have on an abolitionist vision owes a huge conceptual and political debt to the work of Black feminists and radical Black feminists in particular. Um, I'll go so far as to say I don't have an original thought on this. I'm only standing on their shoulders. Um, and I think that part of why I think we need an abolitionist vision is because an abolitionist vision, I think, despite how it's often framed, which is sort of what we don't want, right? Where we don't want funding to go, what we want to shut down, what jobs we want to eliminate, what institutions we want to dismantle. I like to begin with an affirmative vision of the world we want to see. I like to begin by saying, what would the world look like for you or me if all of our needs were met? What would the world look like for us collectively if we could meet each other's collective needs? Certainly the most fundamental ones. And so for me, an abolitionist vision starts from that place of what it means to invest in people, to use a language of investment and love rather than containment and blame. Part of why I think the work of Black feminists is so important is because they've always, as I talk about it, we still hear, they've always managed to offer the most ambitious and robust, forward-thinking, imaginative, creative freedom dreams. Robin Kelly talked about the idea of the freedom dream, and I think, when I think about the Combahee River Collective, when I think about Sojourner Truth, when I think about Bell Hooks, when I think about, we're going down the list, when I think about Ruth Wilson Gilmore or Angela Davis, I'm thinking about movements and individuals and ways of thinking that never exclusively focused on the conditions that they were wrestling with, right? But who understood the interconnectedness of these struggles and the need for a vision of liberation that was expansive beyond them and even included the people who were doing harm to them, right? Which is one of the great moral achievements of radical Black feminism, in my estimation. And so how does the Combahee River Collective keep and hold space, not just to talk about gender oppression, which they certainly could have exclusively, but to talk about internationalism, right? To stand on the shoulders of those who were talking about intercontinentalism, those who were talking about, decades after Bandung, thinking about what it meant to imagine brown folk as aligned nations, what it meant for them to speak out and critique capitalism, what it meant to speak out against the forms of police violence and state violence that were happening to the very Black men who, again, were doing harm in and out of the house to them, right? Who were denying them opportunity, who were squeezing them out of the very same freedom movements. So for me, the abolitionist vision is an expansive one, and it's an inclusive one. What energizes me and excites me is that we've made great steps. I think about, at least like my era, Hiram's era, we on the streets, fighting, think about Rodney King beat. I remember being on the streets of Philadelphia just trying to get them cops locked up. Some of us just wanted to get them cops fired. Some of us just wanted a Black police chief. Some of us just wanted Black folk on the police force. Some of us just wanted police officers to live in a Black neighborhood. I mean, think about how scaled down and whittled down our dreams were, as opposed to what this generation of young activists are doing, staying on the shoulders of critical resistance, standing on the shoulders of these Black radical traditions. I'm not saying they started it, but they have been able to center and mainstream a conversation about what it means to imagine a world that is not yet. To imagine a world without prisons, to imagine a world without policing, to imagine a world where justice doesn't mean confinement, right? Where justice doesn't mean punishment, where we can imagine new selves and new possibilities. And for me, that's what an abolitionist vision means, that we're going to find what people's needs are and get there and not scale down our dreams to the level of that which is our immediate experience. I'm borrowing the language of Howard Thurman there for a reason. Derek mentioned being part of the church, right? I mean, Howard Thurman in the Growing Edge talked about Jesus on the cross, right? You ain't gotta be a religious person. This ain't my story, but he talked about Jesus on the cross, and he said, the story of the cross wasn't just about the crucifixion, it's about the resurrection, right? And just as the Jesus was not a prisoner to the events of the cross, we don't have to be prisoners to the events of our lives. We don't have to reduce our dreams to the level, or our aspirations to the level of that which is our immediate experience. So when Walter Wallace gets shot by police holding a knife in Philadelphia, we don't have to debate whether or not the police could have detained him or take them down without killing them. We don't have to talk about whether they should have tackled them. We don't have to talk about how they could have done that differently. We can ask more ambitious questions. We can ask more audacious, we can hatch more audacious freedom dreams and say, what would it mean for his mom to have somebody else to call other than the police when he's having an episode? What would it mean for his needs to have been met before he ever got to a place where he's picking up a knife? What would it mean for there to be institutions and investments that took care of him or addressed him? This is what it means to have an abolitionist vision. And what we saw during the pandemic is the state tip its hand. We've been fighting. I remember being in COBRA meetings 20 years ago. We were talking about reparations, and they were like, oh, man, we can't get no reparations. Our opponents, where are we going to find the money? Who are we going to give it to? How are they going to determine who's eligible? Where are they going? And it was all these what ifs. And then the state thought American capitalism was on its last legs, and they found $1 trillion with a T dollars. They found money. They found who to give it to. I got PPP loans. I ain't talking out of school. My bookstore got a PPP loan. They sent us the money, and the bank said, we will tell you instructions. Like, when the bank gonna send you 6 figures and say to a black person, they say, we'll figure out the money. We'll figure out the details later. That's how much they needed capitalism to stay alive and stay afloat. Right? They figured it out when they needed to. When those COs didn't want to die, they said, well, maybe we can let some of these older offenders out who are nonviolent. When the police didn't want to get COVID, they said, well, maybe that kid with an L in his pocket, maybe that little bit of cocaine ain't enough to arrest somebody for. We were able to decarcerate. We were able to excarcerate. We were able to get rid of cash bail. We were able to hatch reparations type visions. We were able to do the work of abolition when it benefited the state. So an abolitionist vision is also saying, wait a minute, we see what's possible now. We see what's on the horizon now. They can no longer tell us that it can't happen. We already knew it could happen. Mumia been telling us that. Angela been telling us that. Alice been telling us that. Sojourner and Harriet been telling us that. Fannie Lou been telling us that. Malcolm been telling us that. But now we've taken that mainstream. Now it's in Minnesota City Council. Now it's in Congress. Now it's in the middle of a conversation. We might debate whether defunding is the right language. We might debate whether that's a scaled down vision of abolition. We can have those conversations, but we're having it in a mainstream space. So all I'm saying is, for me, where we got to go is to hold on to that. Don't go backwards. Don't settle for kente cloth and cops dancing with us. Right? Don't settle for the scaled down dream. That's the level of our immediate experience. Just as he was not prisoner to those events, we ain't got to be prisoner to these events. We can imagine a world outside the logic of the prisoner altogether.